we can catch more of the Pels preseason action on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Let's go over to meteorologist Zach Fridella right now. He's got some weather updates.
Yeah, we do have a tornado warning that was just issued. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you that tornado warning. Let me get back to Viper here because it's in Tangipahoa Parish. We have one little cell that has developed just north of Hammond, and it's lifting farther north. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this here, and I'm going to zoom into this area of rotation. And what I could show you is we do have some rotation that is picking up in and around just north of the Hammond radar site. So this is very close to that Hammond radar site, so I'm trying to get that velocity for you. And there's a little bit of rotation that's coming up just north of the Hammond. So east of Tickfaw, going to be right around the highway there, running from Tickfaw towards Laranger, and it's moving due north. So this thing is lifting straight north in Tangipahoa Parish at this time. So if you are in central portions of Tangipahoa Parish, you need to get to your safe place right now. We do have a tornado warning that was just issued. A very fast-moving storm cell here, so this is not going to be there for a very long time. It's going to be very quick how this tornado warning actually responds. So I just wanted to clear that. But we do have a tornado warning that includes the cities of Tickfaw, Laranger, Independence. It doesn't go all the way north to Amite, but it's getting close. We'll see if this thing can hold itself together over the next short while. And if it does, then we could have that warning get extended. But we do have a tornado warning right now in effect for the central portion of Tangipahoa Parish. Not seeing a ton of rotation. I'm trying to zoom in here and get you in close to where we can see where the best rotation is, but it's with this little storm cell. It's a very small cell that is formed just north of the radar site. And sometimes when they form this close to the radar, it's hard to detect that rotating portion of the storm. But east of Tickfaw, going up towards Laranger, you need to be in your safe place right there in that vicinity because we do have some form of rotation that is shifting its way northward. This is in addition to the heavy rains that are already fallen, but that's State Route 442. So Highway 442, you're going to have Highway 445 running north to the east. That's well to the east. So 442 runs from Tickfaw towards the highway there in Laranger. This is lifting due north, so we do have some signs of rotation that are happening right here in central portions of Tangipahoa Parish. Let me clear this little. The tornado warning runs through 445 this morning, so I just wanted to reiterate what timing was on that. Now, the heavier downpours, the heavy rains that are causing the flood warning, that's to the west. So that's on the west side of 55. It is slowly transitioning eastward, though. So we're going to watch this batch of storms, this batch of heavy rainfall that's now going on the other side of the interstate that will slowly push into Tangipahoa Parish. But we do have this one individual cell that is formed ahead of that line of weather, and that's what's providing that chance for maybe the possibility of a tornado. So right around Highway 442, Tickfaw 442, if you live in that vicinity, you need to get to your safe place right now because we do have a rotating storm that could possibly drop a very brief tornado, a very quick tornado. This is not really tornadic weather that we're seeing outside right now. We don't have a ton of rotation in the atmosphere, but you can I always say whenever you have a thunderstorm, you can always get some kind of a weak tornado, and that's what we might have here coming up from Hammond, lifting north. Now, if you're in Hammond, you're fine, and I know we have a lot of people that are watching in Hammond. You're like, oh, is this for me? And you might have got alerted on your phone, and it woke you up. You're not under that tornado warning if you're in Hammond, but north of you, east of Natalbany, east of Tickfaw, right along 442, that's where we're seeing that best rotation. And if it can hold together, it'll run all the way north to Highway 40 because that's the highway that runs from Independence towards the heart of Laranger. So we're going to keep jumping these highways here as it lifts straight northward. So we're tracking that rotation, showing you the velocities on radar. It doesn't show much at this point. It's fairly weak, but there is some signs of rotation that has developed. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and step back here and go through these rotation increments just to see if anything is strengthened or weakened in the last short while, because we did have, and there it is. You can almost pick it out here. There's the rotation. It is so close to the radar site in Hammond. That radar site in Hammond is right near the airport, but this is to the northwest of that. That's why I'm saying this is already past you if you're actually in Hammond. But that cell was rotating a lot more close to the radar site, and then it looks like it's weakened just a bit as it lifts towards the north. It's hard to make out here, but there's the rotation as it's moved past Highway 442, and it probably has moved past Highway 442 in the last 5 or 10 minutes. and then now that rotation should be lifting up north between Independence and Laranja. That's where you'd run into Highway 40. So if you live along Highway 442 in Tickfaw, you should be in your safe place. If you live along Highway 40 from Independence towards Laranja, you should also be in your safe place as the cell continues to lift north. They didn't warn a large area. It's just right there in the central portion of Tangipahoa Parish. Does not include Hammond, and it does not include a meet, even though it's moving towards the general vicinity of a meet, if it can actually hold together, which I mentioned a second ago. I think this thing's already starting to weaken. So let me get into my National Weather Service chat with the National Weather Service and see what they're going to do with this, because this does run until 4:45 this morning. But seeing the signs right now, that we're already starting to notice that some of that is falling apart just a bit. But they're actually typing right now. So we'll see what they say, if they're going to update this morning or if they might actually drop it, because it seemed like the rotation happened very quickly. And then the next few scans, it started to fall apart very quickly, just as fast as it pulled itself together. And sometimes that happens. You can get a small spin up, and it's almost impossible to warm for, because it lasts for 2 minutes. By the time we get the radar shot of it, it's dissipated, and at that point you have a warning, and you really don't have anything that has developed. But we'll see what they say in just 1 second. If you do live along Highway 442 in and around the Tickfaw vicinity, going towards Highway 40 between Independence and Laranja, that's that general area where we're seeing the best rotation, or the greatest rotation, as far as what's going on. Now, they do say, since after scanning aloft the correlation debris moving northwest, they do say confirmed tornado, but that was earlier. So let me see what they're looking at here. We're going to put the debris tracker. It seems like they found a debris signature that popped up with it as it was right near the radar site, and it was so close. It's hard to make out here, but maybe it was. What I'm going to show you is maybe it was this little blue. You see that little blue dot right there? Now, if I can take that and I can coincide it with the velocity on that at that moment, and there's a very small little rotation, a core right there, and that's what they're saying, that they east of Independence, probably some debris fallout again. Just hard to see clear going. Okay, so they're saying that they're going to remove Tickfaw out of this morning, because it does look to have lifted north. The best rotation is now pushed towards the Highway 40 corridor from Independence to Laranja. So as we play this forward, there was some kind of signature, and again, this is very weak. And another problem we're facing, we're so close to the radar site, and when you're this close to the radar site, remember the radar is at the ground level. The radar's here with us on the ground. As it shoots out, it needs some distance to actually get into the clouds, and so when it's very close to the radar site like this, it's hard to detect those small rotations. But the greatest rotation somewhere in and around Independence towards Laranja along Highway 40, they're going to shave back the warning to exclude Tickfaw. So Hammond, Tickfaw, you're fine. You can get out of your safe place in Hammond, Tickfaw. It does look like there was some type of confirmed tornado at one point or another as that cell lifted up towards the north, that came right out of around that radar location of Hammond. But the greatest rotation has now shifted north, and it's somewhere in this vicinity, closing in on Highway 40, right around the Independence area. You go inland, you go farther off to the east, you run into Laranja, but this seems to be more where the Tangipahoa River runs over runs under Highway 40. That's where the greatest rotation is going to be. You have the big curve in the road right there on Highway 40. That's where we're going to see the strongest rotation that's available with this cell. But very fast moving. You're not going to have a ton of time to, you might hear the weather outside, and then all of a sudden the storm is already past you, because this thing is rapidly moving off to the north. I'm going to change through some of my rotation trackers, because it gives me an idea of what might be out there, what might be seen. But it's definitely not as strong as what it was earlier, when there possibly was some type of confirmed aspect to this tornado warning. But at this moment, it does look like that greatest rotation is in and around the Independence community along Highway 40, right where the Tangipahoa River runs under Highway 40. That big curve in the road, that's where we have the strongest rotation that's moving up to the north. We still have this tornado warning. It's going to be carried over all the way until 4:45, unless the National Weather Service comes out and they drop it for some reason, which they can do. A lot of times they do that when the rotation obviously shows signs that it has dissipated. But there's still some very broad rotation aspect to this as it moves up to the north. I mean, usually we throw all these products on here. We're sit here and we talk and you're like, okay, what am I looking at? Reds and greens, okay? I'm showing you the winds in the atmosphere right now. When you have red and green very close to one another and it's a bright coloring, that tells me that there's strong rotation. There's strong wind blowing one way and there's strong wind blowing the other way. Obviously, that's rotating winds. There was much more of a pronounced signature when this thing popped up right near the radar site. And you could see it right there. Right in this vicinity, just east of Albany. I guess you could technically call that still the Hammond area, but the radar site's at the airport, so close to the radar site, but it was right along the highway there. And when I'm going to zoom in, and this is earlier, this is not right now, this is not a current look at it, but I'm looking back at what it looked like to show you how this all played out. 1064, so the greatest rotation was around 1064. They might be a little damaged there because they're saying that there was a debris signature in this vicinity. It's hard to make out though because it's just so close to that radar location, but that's the debris signature that they detected as it lifted away from the radar, that blue coloring. Again, I'm throwing another product at you, but we can now detect when something is not rain in the atmosphere. And in this case, it would be pieces of trees, most likely branches that get thrown up in the atmosphere. But as soon as that little debris ball, and that's what that is, that's a debris ball that's popped up right there, and you can see it right in that vicinity. What I'll do is I'll circle it on your screen. Okay, that's a red coloring, that's not gonna work. Let's do a white coloring here. That's the debris ball. But as soon as it moves past the next scan that I'm gonna go forward in, it goes away. So as I play this out, it'll totally go away as it crosses Highway 442 between Tickfaw and Highway 445 coming north. So it does look like this is weakened considerably, and we've actually seen most of the rotation start to fall apart quite a bit, but there could still be some weak rotation that's there and that's existing, and that's why we have that tornado warning that's going to carry over until 4:45. There's your greatest rotation right now. It's just around the Independence community. I think this is staying far enough west of you that if you're in Larange, you're most likely going to be fine, but it's right where the Tangipahoa River runs underneath Highway 40 and that big curve in the road right there. That's where I'm seeing the greatest rotation, and it will continue to lift towards the north. So the highway branches off. Highway 40 goes one way, and then the highway, let's see what this highway is. Highway 1054 runs north, Highway 40 runs east. There's your rotation tracker. That's right in that vicinity. Not pronounced. You might have some strong winds outside, hopefully not a tornado. It's not as pronounced as what it was earlier this morning, but as this continues to lift north, hopefully it continues to weaken quite a bit. Looking at the information from the National Weather Service, current thought is we will cancel in the next few minutes, but if that changes, we'll pass along here. So that was at 4:18, that's right now. So here at 4:18, it looks like they are going to eventually cancel this warning early, so we're not going to have this tornado warning running all the way until 4:45 this morning. So we are paying attention to see if we have any kind of information where we have some debris. Is that a tree? I did get a report. I'm reading, somebody just sent me a message saying that they're around 1064 and Morris Road. I would have to look and see where exactly that is. They said they heard a sound and they heard some debris kind of get thrown about. So it does look like there was something that touched down for a moment here. Let me find out exactly where 1064 and Morris Road would be, just to kind of give you an idea where we might have some damage. Highway 1064 and Morris Road, where we could have some damage in and around this vicinity. It looks like the only place where we had any type of touchdown, if there was one, would be along, it's also Highway 1064, also known as Albany Road and Morris. Okay, I picked up on where this is. So it does look like it would be pretty accurate. What that person is just saying would be pretty accurate with where our greatest rotation was earlier this morning. Let's zoom in. Let's get out of this. Because they're talking about, there's 1064, all right, and Morris Road. I think it's one of these right here. But when we go back in time, that's where the greatest rotation was. So if we did have some kind of touchdown right, that little pop on radar, that little bright red spot, it's not much. It was probably a very weak tornado, maybe an EF0 or an EF1, but it's enough to wake you up. It's enough to throw some trees around. And so hopefully the report that just came in, we can get some information, see if we do have any damage. Hopefully not any significant damage, but it does look like we did have some form of a confirmed tornado or maybe a really strong wind gust, really strong winds blowing right there just to the west of, this is Highway 10. What highway is this right here? There's so many roads that run all in and around. 1060, so Highway 1064, you have 55 over here to the west, and you would eventually have 445 way off to the east. But right around Highway 1064, that's where it does look like we had some kind of damage just from this brief spin up. Let me go back to the National Weather Service chat and see if they're going to take this away, and they did. So they did cancel this warning. So what I'm going to do is kind of wrap this up for a second here, where they took away the tornado warning. We no longer have a tornado warning in effect for Tangipahoa Parish. It was a very brief, quick spin up possible tornado that developed just north of the Hammond radar site and moved into right along Highway 1064 in and around Natalbany. Still some rains lifting up to the north, and still some of these little small cells. We'll watch them very closely and see if they start to rotate at any point. But remember, we have heavier rains off to the west, and those heavier rains to the west will start to shift over the 55 corridor. So it's going to be a nasty morning to our north and west. Not really a lot happening in the city, not really a lot happening on the South Shore, but we're going to pay attention. We'll have an update on radar in just a few minutes. We'll be right back after this.
Welcome back at 444. I'm Olivia Vidal.
And I'm Josh Robertson. Let's get back over to meteorologist Zach Fradella. Pretty busy morning so far, but we're kind of shifting gears now to see what the weather's looking like.
Yeah, you know, right now we're focused more on the rain part of this and not so much the severe weather threat. We did have a tornado warning earlier this morning. I know if you might be waking up right now and you might look at your phone and it's like, tornado warning, what's going on? That was dropped immediately. We had about 15 minutes of that tornado warning and then they dropped it. Could have a weak tornado maybe developed on the north side of Hammond, closer to Natalbany, in and around 1064, Highway 442, 1064, that area. You might go outside your house, you might see there might be a little damage just because we could have had a confirmed tornado, probably very weak in nature. This was nothing significant. But let's get into the here and now, because now we're talking about the rain part of this. Flash flood warning in effect for Livingston, St. Helena parishes. Then you get that blue box, which runs all the way into our Fox 8 viewing area. That is a street flood advisory, because we do have some heavy rains that are trying to train over the same areas here. Not a ton of problems I don't think we're going to see with this, but it is going to be a very stormy commute along 55. Hammond, not bad right now, but once you go north, you run into that rain shield in and around the Independence area, and then that will continue all the way to the state line, right on through Amite, Roseland, and Kentwood. It does get heavy at times, and you see how we're starting to kind of pocket these little bands of rain, and they're not moving much. They're slowly trying to push east, so we are going to have some heavy rain problems, I think, across our northern tier over the next short while. What prompted that tornado warning, when you look at it, you see that little cell right there, and these things are rapidly moving north. It was right near the radar site in Hammond. It was a very short window where we had the rotation with that storm cell. Bringing you down to the city, not a lot to talk about. We're not seeing the heavy rain in the metro. We're not seeing the heavy rain south of the lake, and we're certainly not seeing the heavy rain on our eastern side of the North Shore. But we do have these weak pockets, and these are also rapidly moving north of some brief downpours. So the streets could still be wet for your morning commute, but it is not going to be consistent like we're seeing up to the north. I wonder if they just issued another tornado warning, and I think that they just did. So what I'm going to do here, is there any way we can shift back to, can we shift to the wall? And I'm going to say that right now, but we do have a tornado warning that was just issued again for the North Shore. All right, are we going to be at the wall with this? All right, can you take the graphics full? We do have a new tornado warning that has popped up in and around Robert. Can y'all put me at the wall right now or no? Okay, send me to the wall. I'll be at the wall for this. All right, so we do have a new tornado warning for Tangipahoa Parish at this hour. Looking at the details on this, this goes until 5:30. So just like the other one, though, we're going to track this with you, and we're going to let you know when they do get rid of this actual tornado warning. This is for a new cell, and all these little cells keep popping up here And are we at the wall right now? Can y'all tell me? Can I walk on the wall? Okay, we're good. All right, so now I could show you what's going on here. This is the tornado warning box that now a little bit farther east than the one earlier. The one earlier was in and around Hammond. This one's farther east. So there's 445, runs up from I-12 towards from Robert northward. This is going to include LaRonger and Robert, but the rotation right now is in and around Robert. So let's focus in on that rotation. We're going to get right into Viper here. And what we'll do is we'll show you the velocities that are popping up with this cell. And it's another one of these. It's very close to the radar site. The little circle right here is the radar. Remember, they moved the radar from Slidell to Hammond, and it's at the airport at Hammond. But there's some rotation trying to show up right there along 190, where 190 and 445 run into each other. That is right in the heart of Robert. That's where the greatest rotation is. So if you're just now getting alerted out of your bed and you're watching me, you need to be in your safe place. If you live north of 12 by 190 in and around Robert, that is where we're seeing that rotation. If you live south of I-12, you're not really included in this warning area. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the rotation, and there's multiple cells here. See, this is the one that's prompted the warning. It kind of gets distorted because it gets so close to the radar site. But you see how this one has some kind of rotation too? There's a little hook on the backside of that one as well. So we have to watch all these weak cells that this morning is not a big tornado morning. It's not the perfect environment, but when you get this strong low-level flow, which we certainly have some strong winds that are blowing into these bigger storms off to the north and west, you can get that weak rotation. So if you are in and around Robert, going north on 445, heading all the way up to Highway 40, which is when you start to get closer and closer to LaRonger, you need to be in your safe place right now because we could have a weak tornado trying to develop. This is farther east than the one earlier this morning. The one earlier this morning was around Natalbany, between Highway 1064 and 442. That is not the tornado warning that we're getting now. This is a new tornado warning. I don't want to confuse the two, even though they're very, very close to one another. But another tornado warning now in effect for Tangipahoa Parish this morning. This one's going to run all the way until 5:30. It'll probably be dropped before that. We're going to watch and see what they say. But they did go with the tornado warning. National Weather Service, same deal. Kind of these storms are like interacting with this boundary that's trying to come in from the west. But there's two cells here. This one that's running up now north of Robert. And then there's another one back down to the south and west. That one seems to have greater rotation just from looking at the radar. But everything is so close to the radar site. Remember, our radar is our eyes to the sky. And when you get this close to the radar, you don't see as much. The radar, to be very efficient, it needs to have distance to shoot out its beam and give us a view of the atmosphere. When these storms are running into the radar, they're so close to that beam, the beam doesn't have enough time to get into the clouds and show us where the rotation is. But it looks very, very weak. What I'll do is I'll flip through here and see if there's any kind of indication where I can see some greater rotation, but there's really not much. And the National Weather Service has to be very cautious because they're so close to the radar, so you might not detect it perfectly. But there's your rotation. It was right over Robert. So if you just now got alerted and you're just now waking up and you're trying to figure out what's going on, we have some rotation in and around Robert. This is now lifting northward, though, so it is going to run the entire length of 445 as it goes north. So if you live anywhere from Robert northward along 445, get into its interior portion of your house, get into your safe place, just to be on the safe side, even though I don't think this is going to be a significant tornado or anything like that. But you can still, we know we have a lot of trees on the North Shore. A tree falling is not something that would be a good thing. Even if it was just from 40, 50 miles per hour winds, that can be a very dangerous situation. So we do have some weak rotation working its way up 445. Lifting northward, now north of Roberts. So the warning did stretch all the way down to I-12. I think if you're along I-12 in and around Robert, you're fine. Okay, it's as you go north of 190, that is where the greatest rotation is going to be with this cell. So we do have a new tornado warning. This is going to run until 5:30. We'll see what they do with this. The other one was supposed to run to 445. They canceled it around 4:18. So it kind of gives you an idea. We watch these things minute by minute as we get updates from the radar site. But right now, it does look like any rotation would be north of Robert. And it's almost like we can use the radar to show you where the greatest rotation is. So let me zoom you in here and show you how it is right there along 445. That is where we get the strongest rotation north of Robert. And we'll look at some of these roads. Doggone Drive, that is Chapella Road. That seems to be that vicinity. And I don't want to get too close in here because these things are sometimes pretty broad too. But as you go up 445, this is Highway 445 north of Robert. That is where we see some signs of rotation. Not very strong. This is not a strong signature for any type of rotation, any type of tornadic activity, but there is a very weak signature that we could have some rotation happening in this area. Let's look at the shear and see if we, I mean, there's not just, it's too close to that big beam, and you see that big hole over here, and you actually could see the airfield from Hammond. You were so close to that, and that's what makes our jobs very difficult as meteorologists to try and look at these things. When these cells get so close to the radar site, it becomes a problem to see what's going on. But that cell number 1, that's just to the northwest in and around 445, and then there's cell to the south, which is now running into the airport, running right over that airport area and also the actual radar site. I'm going to back out and play this out because I do want to show you how things are going in regards to this whole line of weather, which it's weakening a little bit on the northern end, but it's still some very heavy rains. Once you get north of Independence, you run into rain and you're stuck in it all the way until the state line. But heavier downpours over St. Helena and Livingston parishes. These are trying to transition east, and then we just kind of stretch this back down towards the south and west. There's no break in this weather, and then we're actually setting up more lines of storms. These are probably not going to ever impact our Fox 8 viewing area. They're going to run into Baton Rouge, but you do see that corridor of heavier bands of rain that are extending up to the north and west, and then you get that pink box, which is the tornado warning that popped up in and around the Robert community. South of the lake, not much of a threat of anything right now. There's some passing showers, brief downpours, but that's about it. They're not consistent to cause any flooding issues. They're even not even consistent to really cause major traffic problems or travel problems. It's all going to be our northwestern tier from Hammond up north towards the state line. That's where we'll be watching things very closely. And I think this is only going to be an early morning type of activity. Once we start to get 7, 8 o'clock and we get more commuters on the roadway, I really feel like most of this weather will be lifting into Mississippi, and we're going to start to lose some of these tornado warnings. They're still carrying that tornado warning at this hour. I'm trying to see if they update anything from the National Weather Service, but let's zoom you back into that storm cell. Now that it's pulling away from the radar site a little bit, we might be able to see what's going on, but it is still very, very difficult to pinpoint any type of rotation with this overall area. When you see all these colors that we start showing on the map, green means the winds are blowing towards the radar. So remember, the radar site's right here. Winds are blowing towards the radar site. Red, the winds are blowing away from the radar site. This doesn't look like it makes a lot of sense to me. There's no greens and reds really bright, tight, together, wound. So that's what I'm saying. This is a very weak signature for any type of tornado. But if you are in that vicinity from Robert up towards the north along 445, eventually you run into Highway 40. That's what this is going to be. Highway 40 hits 445. If you keep going north, you would eventually run into places like far north, like Holton. If you keep going east, then you run into the Wildlife Center. But I think this is going to be west of that. So if you are along Highway 40, not in Laranger, but east of Laranger, getting closer to 445, that's where we could have some of that rotation approaching in the next short while, just to kind of give you some ballpark area where we might see some of this rotating portion of the storm. But you're going to get the heavy rains. You're probably already getting the heavy rains if you're along Highway 40 east of Laranger, and then the rotation would be on the back end of this if there was any type of strong rotation picking up there. But we do have another cell behind it that's right on top of the radar site. That's not showing much of anything at this hour, but we'll continue to watch it. Which inflow that could be disrupting it could be. Trim north. Okay, so they're about to just trim back. You're going to see this warning update in just one moment. They're going to take Robert out of it because the storm is now up here. That prompted the warning. The storm is now all the way up towards the 40 corridor. There's Laranger. 445, Highway 40. That is my area that I'm telling you. You should probably just get in your safe place, the interior portion of your house, get away from the windows. If you're just waking up with the kids this morning, your phone alerted you. I know if you have the emergency alerts, which you should have the emergency alerts and multiple ways to receive warnings, it probably woke you up out of a deep sleep. You need to just be in the interior portion of your house. Try to put as many windows, try to put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. Just the latest scan from the radar site just came in, and I'm going to change over to velocity and see if I notice anything. And it's hard to pinpoint one specific area here. It's just this broad area of rotation. But these things can spin up. They can spin up very fast. It doesn't take long. But as far as tracking a actual cell that has a tornado or possible tornado, that is very difficult to do with this look right now, because it's just a broad area of some rotating portion of this storm as I change through. And there's just not much, like you're seeing all the bright reds and greens. You're like, oh, that looks bad. Not real. I mean, there's nothing tight. It needs to be tight. It's not going to be this. See how everything's just broad? It's not. It should be a really small, what we call couplet, and I'm just not seeing that with this storm cell. And one thing that might be happening here is, remember I told you there's two storms that are close to one another. One's moving over the radar site. One's now crossing Highway 40 east of Laranger. What they just did was they updated the tornado warning and probably just shaved back the southern edge of that. So I'm going to clear this for a second here. But with this storm getting so close to this northern one, it might be starting to hurt it. So hopefully it can kill off the one that actually prompted that tornado warning. And now that they updated the tornado warning, it looks like they included this storm cell towards the west too. So they're trying to cover both of these. So if I was to tell anybody, any specific area, that there is a concern for the possibility of rotation in a tornado, it would be along Highway 40, Laranger, Highway 40. You are going to have Highway 442 running up from portions of. You're not going to have Highway 442. What's this highway right here? There, the Highway 1064. Are running across here up towards the north, and that's where I would say you have some rotation trying to develop here. But as far as specific area down to the street level, I can't give it to you because it's just too broad. Both of these storm cells could produce a very weak tornado.